FanDuel running back analysis for Week 13. I'm Jason Gilbo, Jay Gilbo 11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Italy 42. You took a look at running backs this week, and we were kind of talking before the show. There's a lot of different options you can go with, and a lot of kind of contrarian ways because this week it's wild. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun week because we got some tough matchups and not really many injury concerns that we're too worried about, aside from one that we'll get to here in a minute. But as far as cash games, if you're going with safety, the best running back in the best spot is David Johnson. I don't think it's particularly close. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, obviously a fine play every week, but tougher matchup against the Giants team that's top 10 against the run. So, David Johnson, who, if you look at his just pure rushing totals, doesn't look like he's been particularly effective, but I mean, his receiving totals are through the roof right now. He's got a receiving touchdown in 3 straight games, had 103 yards last week. 11 targets in 2 straight weeks, on top of the fact that he had 35 carries in those games. I mean, the guy just has a ridiculously high floor, high ceiling, and, regardless of game flow, like if the team's behind, they just check down to him a lot. If the team is ahead, they check down to him a lot. I mean, he's their best playmaker, and, even Larry Fitzgerald has struggled a little bit recently because, you can blame it on Carson Palmer or whatever you want, but I don't think he's been very good. But either way, I mean, if you have a guy like David Johnson, like, why would you not get him the ball as much as possible? And he's just a lock every week to see, 20-plus catches or 20-plus touches. I mean, 29, 21 over the past 2 weeks. He had 161 yards and a touchdown on 21 catches last week. So, I mean, if you're looking for cash game safety, it's there. And, I mean, he's got 3 touchdown upside every week.
Yeah, it definitely does. And Washington's not a great run defense. I mean, they took a big step back, from where they were at the end of last year. I thought they were, one of the defenses I really wasn't targeting against, and that's really changed this year.
Yeah, I mean, Football Outsiders has them ranked dead last now after the 49ers had that fake good week last week. They're 32nd now. So I don't think that, they're actually the worst run defense in the league, but, I mean, they're definitely a bottom-tier run defense, and I don't think that David Johnson is going to have any trouble putting up 130-plus yards overall in this game.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Speaking of 49ers here, you're looking at the opposing back, Jordan Howard. Comes at a really nice price for a guy facing, the worst rush defense in the league.
Yes, the actual worst run defense. And, I kind of hope that people are not on him as much after J.J. struggled last week, but that wasn't so much a product of him not being good as much as it was a product of that offensive line was just horrible in that game. No Mike Pouncey, and there's injuries. What do they have? 3 injuries on their offensive line. Doesn't look like it's likely to get any better this week. They're kind of mysterious injuries right now. It just says day to day or week to week, as from what I'm seeing here on Friday. So, no indication that they're going to get Pouncey back, and I mean that's a huge loss for them. So, looking at Howard, this is a Bears offense that it's pretty terrible. It's a whole bunch of nobodies right there right now. But, this is a team that Matt Barkley looked really good last week, better than his numbers indicated because he saw, 2 drop touchdown passes, some other big drops. The offensive line wasn't great, but, Howard just continues to get a ton of touches. He's been a solid running back for them, over the past, 10 or so weeks now facing that team that's just absolutely horrible. And, over the season, you got Jordan Howard now 10th in the league in snaps among running backs. And, I mean, that's including 11 total snaps in the first 2 weeks. So, I mean, the guy's on the field a ton. He gets a ton of looks. He had 202 yards in a game a couple weeks ago. He's pretty much a lock to get you 90 to 100 all-purpose yards. And he hasn't scored a rushing touchdown in almost a month now. But you got to imagine if you're going to make a bet on when that's going to change, it would be this week.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, I mean, the price really doesn't get any nicer, for a nice RB2 spot, or if you're paying up at wide receiver, I don't even mind locking him in. And if you're playing early only, I mean, you don't have David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell on the slate.
It's easy. He might be the top point per dollar guy on that early slate, like by far.
Yeah. GPP backs, this one has a lot to do with Mark Ingram being listed as questionable with the toe injury. You're looking at the backup here, Tim Hightower. And obviously anyone for the Saints basically this week is in play.
Yeah, I mean, Hightower is a guy that you could even make a case for in GPPs, even if Ingram plays, because, we've seen Ingram kind of be banged up. Some weeks we don't think he's going to play at all, and then all of a sudden he shows up and dominates. But, Hightower's been a pretty big part of the offense even in games where we saw Ingram have big games, like the San Francisco game, he still had 24 touches and a touchdown. Last week, he had 15 carries, 2 receptions, found the end zone. I mean, he's got 16 and 17 fantasy points on FanDuel last 2 weeks. And I mean, that first one against Carolina, that was a much, much tougher matchup than he's going to see this week. Last week was no cakewalk either against the Rams, and he was still pretty effective. So, for a guy that still doesn't even have a picture on FanDuel, I guess he's not going to get one this season. I mean, he's been pretty good. And if Ingram is out, I mean, I'm not going to say he's a must play, but in cash games, there's no way I'm not going to play him if he's the lead back without Ingram. So $6,300 is a really nice price. And, against the Lions team, it's bottom 5 against the run. I don't think in a GPP it's that bad of an idea to make a lineup or 2 with both of them and load up at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at that game. I mean, I'd bet if they had a team total over 40, I'd probably bet the over.
Yeah, I mean, it's the highest total. It's just under 30 points, yeah. And I don't think they're going to score 49 like they did last week, but I don't think anyone will be surprised if they did.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And speaking
I'll take that under bet though. 40? No, I won't actually. It seems like a good value, but there's no way. I mean, I wouldn't be stunned to see him put up 40. Sorry about that Lions line.
Yeah. Looking at Latavius Murray, 6,700. I like this one a lot, and I like this game because, I mean, it's a top 5 total this week, and, I don't know if it's going to get a lot of praise. I think guys in the passing game will, like Cooper and Sammy Watkins, is kind of GPP dart throws, but Latavius Murray's sneaky multi-touchdown upside.
Yeah, and I mean, that passing game, Derek Carr has been really good, but it's hard to predict each week, which one of Cooper or Crabtree is going to have a big week. And I was on the wrong side of it last week. I was on Cooper. Of course, Crabtree had a big week. Seems like that's just the case with me this year. I tend to be on the wrong one of those 2 guys more often than not. But Murray, since he's been back, he's been quietly really good. I haven't heard anyone really talking about him. He's listed as questionable right now, limited participant a couple days ago, but it doesn't seem like there's actually any concern that he's going to sit out. I mean, he was questionable heading into last week, and, yards per carry wise wasn't very effective, but Carolina's a pretty tough matchup there. Still ended up with almost 90 total yards and a touchdown. Had 3 touchdowns against Denver, a team that, not as good against the run as people seem to think, but neither are the Bills. It's a team that people, I guess as a general statement, tend to think that they're a good defense, and they're an above average defense, but they rank bottom 10 against the run, and Murray's getting right around 20 touches each week. He's under $7,000 on FanDuel, and with a guy who's got 9 targets in the last week too, he's got a pretty safe floor, regardless of what the game flow is. I mean, last week they were up huge, blew the lead. Carr left for a little while, or I guess it was only 1 series he left for, but I mean, he's still a pretty important part of this offense, and we've seen that none of these other running backs on this team have given any danger of taking away any touches from, because they're all just I can't say the word that I want to say to describe them, but they suck.
Value running backs here, James Starks, 5,800 taking on Houston. And one thing that's for sure, I mean, these Packers prices on basically their entire offense is pretty down for a team that has a relatively high total and a Houston defense that's kind of slipped.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's a team that, you generally think of them more as a solid defense against the pass, and they are. I mean, Football Outsiders ranks them, I think, 12th against the pass, which I feel like is a little low. They're giving up just barely 200 yards a game. Aaron Rodgers has a hamstring injury, they say. I'm not reading too much into that. I think he's fine. He's certainly looked fine. I mean, he's been arguably best quarterback in the league over the last 6 weeks, at least by a fantasy perspective. But Starks, the most interesting thing that I saw was only David Johnson among running backs was on the field for more snaps last week than Starks was. Saw 54 snaps and only 68 total yards. But it's encouraging to see the fact that he was on the field a ton, especially if Rodgers is less than 100%. Maybe they rely on the run a little bit more. And, that's a Houston defense that isn't good against the run. It's another one of those numbers I feel like is a little bit off. I think Football Outsider says they're 18th. I tend to think they're a bottom 3rd defense against the run. So Starks may get some extra looks in the red zone this week. And, I mean, if he's on the field for 50-plus snaps, then that's a crazy low price for him, 5,800.
Yeah, definitely. Next one here, I mean, this one's interesting because you're looking at, Trevor Siemian not playing, Paxton Lynch likely under center. on the road against Jacksonville. This just seems like a ground and pound game, and it sets up Dante Booker.
Yeah, I mean, this is more so a play, more of like a cash game option, I think, because, we haven't even seen – we saw 2 touchdowns from him total, one against Houston, one against San Diego. But, I mean, from a yards per carry perspective, I mean, Booker has not been good. He's getting a ton of touches, which is what's encouraging. That's really what I'm looking at here. I mean, 24 carries each of the last 2 weeks, 76 and 79 rushing yards. Only seeing a couple targets per game, so you're not really banking on that. But like you said, quarterback out, the passing game has been inconsistent anyway. So you know that his workload is safe there because Denver's going to run the ball 20-plus times. And, this week, obviously he's seen a much easier matchup than what he saw last week against the Chiefs. Now he gets the Jags, bottom 10 team against the run. They've actually been really good against the pass anyway. So I think this is a game where they're going to rely on the run a lot. And I think Booker's in line for, 20-plus touches, and I'm hoping that he can maybe break one long one, find a way in the end zone, and I don't think he'll be highly owned either.
No, I don't think so. And, there's a lot of guys under 7K, guys that we didn't mention, but like Jeremy Hill, Theo Riddick. I think those guys are going to draw higher ownership, and Booker's kind of a swerve off of those guys who, relatively all have kind of a similar floor.
Yeah, and I mean, you figure a guy getting 24 carries a week, assuming that he sees around that amount, I mean, just by default, you're going to luck yourself into some touchdowns. I mean, Matt Asiata gets touchdowns. He doesn't deserve any of them. So, I mean, Booker's going to get one eventually. He might still get his 3 yards a carry, but I mean, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get at least one touchdown this week.
It wouldn't be a podcast until you say something about Matt Asiata and Carson Palmer at the same time.
Yeah, I'll save the Jameis Winston hate for the next one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
it's coming. It's coming.
That's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel running back analysis for Week 13. If you want to read Justin's article, you can head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com. Be sure to check out the rest of our Week 13 content.